There we go. He's beginning to smoke.
So can you believe it? We've been at this Four Ways collaboration project now for just over 2.5 years. This month's project was suggested by Tomislav Tomašić. It's a turned picture frame. Not something I would have thought about, but it does. That's good because new ideas push our abilities a little bit. So we're going to start off with a block, 8-inch. I've roughed out on a bandsaw. It's maple, solid block. I've got a couple of pieces of backer board that came out of an old set of drawers, and I've got a piece of plexiglass that we're going to use as the glass for this frame. So what I'm going to show you is how I went about coming up with a design, how I'm going to shape that project, deal with those chucking challenges we're going to have to reverse this and cut through it, how we're going to cut the backer boards round, how we're going to cut the plexiglass round. If this is something you're interested in, keep watching, and I hope you'll watch the videos. I'll have the links in the description area of my four-way collaboration partners, Richard Raffan, Tomislav Tomašić, and Sam Angelo. If this is something you're interested in, keep watching. Like any project I haven't done before, I've got to think through it a little bit, do a little research, find other examples and ideas. So I sketched out a few ideas. I did a little searching on Pinterest, picked up something I had in the shop. It might give me some ideas, just this round contraption. Turned a little tiny prototype with a design on it. I looked at some molding I had around the shop to see if it would give me any ideas. What I've concluded is I'm going to come up on this 8-inch blank of maple with it. What appears to me the right size border is going to be 1.5 inches, and we're going to go ahead and go from there. All right, so let's start with a big picture. We're going to start with a 8-inch diameter block of wood, about 1 inch thick, 25 millimeters by whatever 8 inches is. So here's what we're coming to. Here's a side view of it. Let me give you a quick illustration of what we're doing. So let's say this is 1 inch. We've got to have a recess in the back to put in a sheet of plexiglass that I'm going to use. I'm not going to use glass. So that's going to be this right here. Not much of an artist. Now to hold that in, we're going to have a backer board. So we're going to have a recess for that backer board that'll come all the way across the back of this. And then we've got some way of tacking this down. This may actually extend below here just a little bit, like that. And then just beyond the glass, we've got our design. Not sure exactly what we're coming up with yet, but let's say it looks something like this. And that's what we're going to turn. I always like using a woodworm screw because it was a fast and easy way to mount a lot of projects, but after watching enough of Richard's videos, I went ahead and made a screw chuck. I've got a faceplate ring to mount it with because this is even faster. It works just like a woodworm screw, except it's a little faster. So my screw chuck requires a 13/64 drill bit. Let me place this on top of something so I don't drill into my table saw, and it doesn't matter whether we go all the way through or not because it's going to, that middle is going to come out anyway. So try to get this perpendicular. And there we go, we're ready to mount. Here I'm turning a prototype just to get a feel for the band. This is a little smaller than 8 inches, but this is the 1.5 inch width. I need a little spacer. I don't need that entire screw, and I'm just going to put this on. And then round off the edge. Put a spindle lock on it so I can use both hands. And it's a very secure hold. Take the spindle lock off before I forget. Switch tool rests. One a little bit bigger. And I didn't use any kind of jig to cut this with. I just cut around a circle I'd drawn. So let's see what I can do here about getting this round. Just come in from the side. the way, this is the front and this is the back. I did that so I can hollow out the whole back with those recesses. So before I do any tear out, I got to come in from the other direction. I see a couple of small cracks in this wood that weren't visible before, but I don't think they'll cause me any problems. Now let me mark some critical dimensions. As I say, this is going to be the back of the picture frame. I've got to rechuck it from this direction. I'm going to use a recess, a 4-inch recess. So let me go ahead and mark that on here. So I've got to make that recess. The rim is going to be 1.5 inches. So I'm going to mark that. And that's just to show me from the bottom where that's going to cover. So I've got to get behind that by just some small amount, maybe 1/4 inch for that plexiglass. So I need to make that recess. And then I need to come behind that at least, I'd say 1/4 inch for the backer board. So those are the critical dimensions. So these are going to be recesses. This is going to be a recess as well for the chuck. After looking at how little room there is between the recess for the chuck and the inside rim of this, I'm going to use a different set of chuck jaws, and why that's important will be revealed a little bit later. So I'm going to use one that's 3.5 inches, so I need to come in another 1/4 inch right there. Before I actually cut the dovetail recess, I'm going to remove a little bit of wood in the middle with a 3/8 inch bowl gouge. I don't think I've got to worry about hitting that screw. I think that's probably got it. Now I'm going to use my DIY dovetail tool. Did a little article for this for AAW. Got a video on it. I'll have a link above. So I'm just going to come in. That recess. There we go. There's that recess. So I come back to my 1.5 inch measurement. That's this line here. Got so many lines, it gets confusing. But I want to go ahead and mark that. And rather than measure how wide it's going to be, I'm going to use this 5/16 because that's how wide I'm going to make it. And I'll just use that to just mark it from there. That's a lot of steel on the wood. I don't want that much vibration, so I'm just going to use a parting tool. It's a little bit smaller than that, makes successive cuts. I'm going to go down just a little over 3 millimeters because that's the thickness of the plexiglass. Actually, for this first one, it needs to be thick enough for the plexiglass and the backer board that's going to cover it. So that's going to be right at. Let's just measure those two together and see. Just under 1/4 inch, so we're going to make it 1/4 inch. Gives ourselves just a skosh bit more room. Set this to 1/4 inch as a go no go gauge, so I can check it from time to time by just coming in there like that. That halfway there. A bit more. Backer board is about 3+ millimeters, so let's just set that and check that. My calipers. Nope, got a little more to go. Cutting plexiglass can be tricky, so I've decided to cut a template exactly the right size that I can put up against it. So let me just show you how I make that template. I've measured just where the inside of that plexiglass is going to fit, and now I'm going to cut this template to use for cutting that. It's got some rough edges, but I can cut those off with a pocket knife. Okay, so now I've got that. So now I'm going to bring this up against this plexiglass, leaving a boundary all the way around, and I just hope this film has gotten loose, so I just hope it's not going to be a mess trying to cut it with that loose film, but I don't want to scratch the plastic up in handling. So I've got nice even support, I think, all the way around, and now I'm going to come in right against this template with that parting tool and cut that plastic. I did this first time for a fellow that needed a round piece of plexiglass for an automobile he was restoring. He was an engineer and he couldn't figure out how to cut it without marking the center, and I said, well, I can do that. The hole in here that was already there was a little too big. That cone, actually I do have another cone that might work. Let me try that. I have a 90-degree cone that might not come through. This is a 90-degree cone rather than a 60-degree cone, and that'll work. This will work perfectly. It doesn't penetrate the hole, but it still gives even pressure. So let's put it back. Put that approximately center. Put the 90-degree cone. This is a record power cone. I've never seen a 90-degree cone before, but it is very handy for certain tasks. And I want to put a substantial amount of pressure on here because it's got to keep it from slipping and sliding away while I'm cutting it. And it's going to be flapping around, so we'll see what happens if it cuts through that neatly and doesn't make a mess with that film. Alright, you got to go at a pretty reasonable speed. I'm not sure what reasonable is. I'm going to do it at about 1,000. I'm going to bring this flush up against the edge. I think I've broken through, or I've broken it, one or the other. Oh no, it slipped. Oh, I should have put, okay, I should have put Turner's tape on it. But it didn't, I'm hoping that because of this film it didn't scratch it. So let me figure out how to put some Turner's tape on here to keep this thing from shifting. Okay, the first attempt I did this was a disaster because this started slipping on the backboard. So I've decided to put a little bead of hot glue so it won't spin on me. I've just got to let it cool down for just a second. And I had to substitute a 90-degree cone because the 60-degree cone actually went through this and was going to touch the risk of scratching the center of the plexiglass, but this 90-degree cone doesn't. This is by record power. Okay, I think it's cool enough to hold it, so I'm just going to come right against the edge. I probably didn't get it perfectly centered, but some of this is going to be covered by the wood of the frame, so it shouldn't be an issue. Maybe I'm pressing too hard. Okay, I'm seeing the MDF come through, so I think I'm through. And pop that off while it's still somewhat soft. This is the MDF backer board I use for various off-center projects or something. With a faceplate on the back. Alright, so I hope I didn't damage this too much. Looks good on this side. Looks good on this side, so I think we're good to go. So using a compass for that recess for the backer board, I'm transferring that to the board. Draw the circle. Now I'm going to mount it on the lathe similar to the way I did the plexiglass. To eliminate the risk of this spinning, I'm going to do it the same way I did with the plexiglass. I'm just going to put a single bead along the edge. As before, I'm going to use my thin parting tool right on that pencil line. You want to turn it, make sure it's not going to bump against anything. And there's the backer board. Let's double check, make sure it fits. And it's perfect. So now that I got the back turned, I can go ahead and remove it from the screw chuck and reverse chuck it using a little different jaw set than this. I see a couple of small cracks here. I'm going to have to keep an eye on. I'm going to go ahead and just dribble some CA, but that won't hold a crack. Won't keep it from flying apart. Put it on using the recess I turned. Expand into that recess. Snugly, but not too firm that I'll break it out. And now I'm ready to turn. I'm going to go ahead and bring up some tailstock support. Probably not necessary, but with those cracks, who knows? Always good to have a margin for safety. So I've got it reverse chucked with that recess. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark where I'm going to wind up parting through at the very end. I've transferred that from the other side. That lets me know. And I'm going to go ahead before I do anything else and mark that with a thin parting tool so the pencil line doesn't disappear on me. I'm not going to go too far, but just enough. And there's where I'm going to part through. Now I fiddle around with the design a little bit, come up with something I like. First thing I've got to do is I've got to round over this edge. So now I'm going to mark the other dimensions. I'm going to have a small fillet right here. Then I'm going to have a bead right there. Those will be the main ones, and then of course I'm going to have a bead, larger bead here on the outside. And then this is going to cove in, and I'm going to do some texturing right here. So first thing I got to do is round over this edge. So let me get a spindle gouge and speed up a little bit. And just round this over. I think it's pretty much got that except for sanding. Now let's mark the inside of that bead. And since it's going to come down a little ways, I'll just use a wide parting tool. And the bead will come around. Bead looks right. I can probably do a little scraping, a little sanding, certainly. Okay, so now I'm going to cove in from here down to here, but now I've got to go ahead and bring this fillet down. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here. I've measured the thickness back there because I've got a gap so I don't go through. Got that measurement depth, so I can tell I've got a long way to go. So I'll open that up a little bit more, and I think it's going to be easier rather than use this thick one to use 1/8 inch and make a couple of parts. So let me do that. The less steel on the wood, the less friction, vibration. That's much easier. But actually, since there's going to be a bead there, I don't want to go, yeah, I do too. I want to go a little bit deeper. Okay, there's room for that little fillet there on the edge and parting. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to the outside of that bead. So I'll go ahead and use this for that as well. Each side of the bead is going to be about the same. Got a ways to go. Okay. And I'm just going to make some of this go away. Kind of round it over just a little bit. Detail spindle gouge is probably easier on this. And then I can scrape it a little bit better. Okay, now this is going to come into the base of that. So let's make that go away. At the base of this, I'm going to have a little cove that I can do some texturing in. So let me go ahead and find a cove tool and we'll do that. I'm using this 1/4 inch cove tool to get there to make a little trench for the texturing tool I'm going to get in there. I'm going to rinse and tighten this. It's slipping on me a little bit. Yeah, I can tighten this by hand, but there we go. All right. Deep enough? I think it is. It's shaped properly. Maybe I could go a little bit more shear straight. Alright, let's check that against the texturing tool I'll use. So there's the texturing tool. It's going to float in there, and I think that'll probably work well. I need to sand that before I texture. I'll do that off camera. Before I texture, I think I want to do all the rest of the detail. So let me go ahead and get this bead and get this bead. So we're just going to find the point tool to define the bottom of that bead. Just make it a little easier. Alright, there's the bottom of the bead. I can probably use the point tool to shape it a little bit. It's just a scraper. Okay, got that defined. Now let's use the 3/8 inch detail gouge. That's the one that's not milled as deep as a regular gouge. So it's a little stiffer. It's got a little sharper point. I'll just bring it around. And bring it around on this side. And that's still a pretty proud bead. Let me just scrape this a little bit. And that looks good. Now let me take one more pass on smoothing this up before we sand. Okay, sand it up. See just a bit of a line there. In some places it's too big to sand out, so let me work on that a little bit. I'm going to come in here with a spear point and come in right there and make a little more of a pronounced V groove. Very carefully, keeping it flat. There's that. Now I think I can probably use the tip of this to kind of scrape that little scratch out of there. Did very fine shaving, so that's working real well. I want to sand out a really big scratch. Okay. Yeah, that looks good. I need to go back and sand it. I've got a little bit of tear out where I cut that. Matter of fact, I think maybe I'll try a different tool. I think this beading tool, the point tool, may wind up cutting a little bit cleaner. Let's see. Yeah, just a little bit. Excellent. Okay. Now I'll touch that up with a little 220 grit right in there. And I think I'll probably hit it with some 400 grit. Now I'm ready to do a little texturing in here. So I'm going to use my homemade Dremel burr tool, and with an incline, and with a cove I will be able to get texture along the bottom as well as the sidewall. So let's slow the speed down to no more than about 700, 600, and then bring that in. What kind of effect we're getting. Okay, I'm getting some nice texturing. That'll be okay. So to get rid, I need to burnish that a little bit. So I use one of these non-woven pads to just get rid of any loose fibers in there. Don't want to sand it. Just want to burnish it a little bit and get rid of those frizzies. Okay, that looks good. And anytime you texture, you've got to border that thing. So I'm going to use my point tool and get that wrench out again. The other side of this little pointier, I think, than that one I was using. So I think this is going to be a better fit for what I want. Okay, so we're going to take that. We're just going to come in right there and make a tiny little accent, if you will, to frame it. Get the speed back up to about 1,000. And just come in perpendicular to the wood, slightly pointed down. And there's that. Now we've got to come in on the other side and frame it. Let me see exactly where I want that frame to be on this side. Okay, it comes up a little bit on the side, something right there. And that looks good. Yeah. Okay, now the scary part is I'm going to part through here with a thin parting tool, and we're going to see what happens. Yeah, I wasn't aggressive enough going deeper here, so I'm going to go back in and do another 1/8 of an inch or so maybe. And now I can make that bead just a bit smaller as well. I'm ready to part through. This is the fun part. When I part through, this thing is going to come bouncing around back here off the back of the chuck, and I don't want to scratch it, so I'm going to just put a little padding around the chuck to reduce that chances of anything bad happening. At least that's going to be my goal. A little more here. Wasn't necessary when I was cutting a backer board because it was flush up against the back, but in this case it's going to break free and just start rolling around. So, okay, let's get the thin parting tool. About 1100. Slowly but surely. Feel some sound changing. There we go. Whew, it was beginning to smoke. It was a lot of friction there. Okay. Let's see what we got. I may have to do a little cleanup work on the back with a Dremel or something. There we go. Well, I think yeah, I think that's good. I parted it too far back, so I'll have to just take that off with a Dremel. And that won't be any effort. Actually, maybe I'll try something different. All right, take all this protection off of here. Throw that away. Take off this recessed block. I can figure out something to do with that, maybe. So I'm going to use these cold jaws or button jaws or mega bowl mounting jaws. These are by Record Power. They've got these buttons with different profiles on them, so you got to line them up all in the right direction based on the profile that you're holding, large or small, or whether you're holding something on the inside or the outside. Okay, I'm going to use this 1/2 inch spindle gouge in a scraping cut. I'm going to start off slow. Slowly get the speed up. I'm going to switch to a face shield, get the speed up. There's a maximum safe speed on this. Let me see if I can see what it is. I think it's either 600 or 800. Should have read it before I mounted it, but I think it's about 600, so we're not going to go faster than 600. Light cut. Now I want to get it even with that back, so I think I'm going to use a negative rake scraper, and that'll be this skew on the side. Using the flat part.
my wife pick out the colors. I showed her the dyes I had, and I found some oil wood stain. She didn't care for the plain maple, so that's what we're going to go with. I'm just going to paint it on with the foam brush and hope for the best. I think we've all put pictures in frames. It's pretty straightforward. So I put in my plexiglass first, made me a suitable picture, put that in next, take the backer board, put that in to secure it. And then a friend of mine who makes picture frames loaned me his point gun, and we'll see how that works. See which end it comes out of. It comes out of this end. Anyway, you put it in right here. I think it may... I hope it's recessed enough. I'm going to tilt it down just a little bit, although it says don't do that. And there we go. And I'll put in a few more points. I won't show my mistakes on camera. But that worked real well.
So turning a picture frame was an interesting project for me. If you liked the video, please click on the like button so YouTube will it'll communicate to YouTube that they should send this video out to other like-minded woodturners. Don't forget to watch the videos of my other three collaboration partners, Richard Raffan, Sam Angelo, and Tomislav Tomašić, and I'll have the links in the show notes below. Please leave a comment or a question. And remember, y'all stay safe and come on back, you hear?